Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. Qin Mu blushed. It's a little much, there's just 9 of them. 9 of such elders? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was astonished. Were those 9 people like mute? If so, the origin of this heavenly devil cult master was a little terrifying. There are still 9 people who are like me, my path won't be lonely. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor gave a gratified smile. I thought there was no one else other than me who had walked up to this step. Now, my heart suddenly feels calm. Qin Mu looked at him curiously and suddenly wondered if he would be beaten to death if he used Green Heaven's eyes to look at Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor now. He really wanted to see if Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was the same existence as Village Chief. However, he couldn't see through Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. He couldn't see through this person's cultivation, nor could he see through his nature. There were many contradicting points to this person. If he used Green Heaven's eyes to look at him, he might flare up. Imperial Preceptor, Palace Master is talking to you, why aren't you replying? Qin Mu looked towards the source of the voice and saw this person that had spoken walking down the platform. He wore a bronze mask which was very unique. It had exaggerated facial features which included long and wide ears, nose like an eagle's beak, a huge mouth, 2 pillar-like eyes, wide eyebrows, a hole on the forehead which seemed to be prepared for another eye. Once Qin Mu saw the forehead under that mask, and there was indeed an eye there. There was an eye between this person's brows. What is this technique? He was slightly stunned. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor looked over to that bronze-masked man, and his gaze went past him, landing on Passion Parting Palace Master Chiu Ji. Palace Master Chiu of Passion Parting Palace, your technique of Secrets of Hatred Parting Heavenly Sword is equivalent to a sword art handed down by a god. His gaze landed on the next person. Chariot Castle Lord Chaixinli, Jade Castle Lord Yu Qingsheng, Black Castle Lord Li Fei. Castle Lord Chai's technique is Heaven's Law Mysterious Devil Seal, the technique to seal the devil path of Dao Sect. Jade Castle Lord's technique is 5 Insects Dragon Transformation Technique, which raises venomous insects into dragons. Castle Lord Li, you refine poison, but for what your technique is, I'm not clear. Castle Lord Li chuckled. There are still techniques that Imperial Preceptor doesn't know? My technique is called Poison Transforming 3 Immortals Mystery Technique, which is good at transforming poison into power. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's gaze landed on another person. Spiritual Master Dao Quan always treats illnesses and saves people, so why have you joined the rebels too? Over 10 years ago, due to the flood from surging river, plague ran amok and an epidemic spread throughout the south. Spiritual Master treated the people and gave free medicines, earning a good reputation in the whole world. I had wanted to invite you to be an official in Imperial College, but you declined, thus you were only conferred the title of Spiritual Master. Spiritual Master Dao Quan said solemnly, we can't work together when our paths are different. Imperial Preceptor, I had to decline your offer back then because I could see that you and I were people on different paths. You are too ruthless, wanting to eliminate all sects in the world, so I have no choice but to stop you. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor fell silent. I eliminate all sects in the world to be able to treat more people. Have you seen how I've been doing? Spiritual Master Dao Quan said, you are doing very well. Originally, there were few apothecaries in this world, but now they are like the hairs on a cow. Even flying ships are assigned with apothecaries and medicine children, making it hard for the plague to go on a rampage. However, over these years, all physicians Imperial College taught are quacks and none of them can be considered as divine physicians. You can't refute this point. Looks like your path is really different from mine. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor looked at another row of people and said, High Official Ma Lianshan, Lord Ma. I dare not, Ma Lianshan said solemnly. Imperial Preceptor, my official position was recommended by you, but I also have my sect. I'm from Zhongnan Mountains, cultivating Nanming 5 Li Sword Classics. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said, I had asked His Majesty to appoint you as an official because you are upright and impartial, furthermore you're good at leading troops as well. I had thought you would toss away the sectarian bias, but you became a rebel, inflicting pain on me. As an official, you did good and the people always had extremely good words about you. Ma Lianshan shook his head. How could I be the only good official that had rebel? Imperial Preceptor, you should reflect upon your mistakes. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said with a stupefied face, the rotten branch must be chopped off at once. If the hearts of people wallow in the old and rot away, how can we reform? If we only start a revolution and don't reform the lives of people rotting away, it would be hard for the world to be at peace. Even though you're a good man, you're in my way. He looked at other people and said, Beggar Sect Chi Dayo, Sect Master Chi, 100 Paul Mystery Technique. Heavenly Stars Catcher Sect, Sect Master Luo Xinghe, Heavenly Stars Catcher's Mystery Technique. Great Strength Monasteries Venerable Shi Kong, Formation Existence Destruction Emptiness 4 Incantations Mudra. Great Potalaka Monasteries Venerable Hong Fa, Buddhism Life Body Technique. South Sea Verta Monasteries Venerable Hui Yin, Vajra Unbeatable Technique. There's also Sakyamuni Xian Kong, who was originally the ruler of Xian Kong Country, ruler of Nanjing Country, Duan Yin, ruler of Shifan Country, Nu Hua, as well as the 3 seniors of the old generation. His gaze landed on the 2 old men and 1 old woman. The 3 of you are from the old generation and are already ancient, about 700 to 800 years old today, am I right? After living for over 800 years, you have reached the end of one's lifespan. May I know how many years the 3 of you have left? The short, skinny, and black elder smiled. I'm Wanderer Shonai, people call me Wanderer Li. I still have 16 years left. Actually, I can't be considered as a wanderer. Qin country, the small country that Imperial Preceptor eradicated, was the country I had founded. I'm true Lord Tien. The old woman grinned. I love to breed insects, which Imperial Preceptor should have seen before. Castle Lord, you of 3 Wonders Castle is my son. The plump elder said, I don't have such a huge background like them. I'm teacher poor, don't look down on me for being so fat since I got broke from eating. We cultivate the poor logic technique, so the poorer we are, the more logical we are. Teacher poor is joking around. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor asked solemnly, when you see things from the angle of a poor person, you should work to seek knowledge, to attain it by investigating things. I know this logic. But you're a teacher, so why are you rebelling against me? Teacher poor shook his head. When you cultivate a good character when you are poor, the world will become like you when you rise to power. Imperial Preceptor, there's no benefit to the world when your power is too great. I rebel not for my own personal gain, but like them, I did it for Eternal Peace Empire. Based on your overwhelming power, we can still get rid of you now. But if it were a few years later, you would have already become the Emperor. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor straightened up on the peak of the mountain and his indifferent voice spread out in all direction. Who else is against me? Voices instantly sounded out one after another in Daoxiang City. I am. Liao Yingji of Heavenly Immortal Sect dares to rebel against Imperial Preceptor. Glorious Grand Master Qiao Ximing dares to rebel against Imperial Preceptor. Wuling Marquis Shan Mu dares to rebel against Imperial Preceptor. Juhu Manor Adjutant Qing Mingyu dares to rebel against Imperial Preceptor. Wuying Country Magistrate Chen Yao dares to rebel against Imperial Preceptor. Voices sounded out from Daoxiang City, and all of them belonged to great experts of life and death realm and celestial being realm. When one finished speaking, another voice would take its place, without end. The declarations grew greater and greater in power, gripping people's hearts and firing them up. The blood of the bronze-masked man was also racing when he said in a resounding voice, Imperial Preceptor, do you see this? How unfavorable you are. With all the people in the world wanting to kill you, what face do you have to continue living? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was expressionless and said indifferently, all the people in the world? A mere few 100,000 people in this city are fit to be called all the people in the world? They are just an insignificant bunch who simply need to be eradicated. Only when all of you are dead can the world finally be at peace. In that case, the end will only come when one side is entirely wiped out. The bronze-masked man said, "Heavenly prison seal has already been laid down on this mountain, clearing an area of 50 hectares. There's no need to worry about injuring the soldiers outside by clashing here. This time, we won't be talking about the righteousness and justice of the martial world nor the rules of the martial world." Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief and smiled at Cai Yunxiang. "In that case, I can be at ease." Monk Yun Q had an ashen expression as he stuttered, What do you mean at ease? We are trapped in the seal and will be the first to die from the tremors. Do you still remember Heaven Wave City? This battle will definitely be several times more terrifying than the one in Heaven Wave City." Yu Qinghong and the rest were also pale-faced. Only a portion of Guian Devil King's magic power had descended in the Battle of Heaven Wave City, fighting against Dragon Rider Sect Master and another strong practitioner of the Cult Master level, yet the scale of the destruction had been unimaginable. Even the Dragon Qilin, which was extremely strong, couldn't withstand that kind of blow. If a huge battle broke out here, the destruction would be several times greater. However, the area of 50 hectares was all sealed, which meant that the pulses formed by the strong practitioners fighting here would rebound to and fro, stirring things up. When that time came, even the Dragon Qilin would become minced meat. At this moment, huge flags suddenly fluttered out of the city and extended forever into the distance, stretching over dozens of miles. The bronze-masked man and the others who were standing high up sported great change in expression when they looked over. The huge flags that were dozens of yards long fluttered upwards and covered the enemy camp. Hidden beneath them were the cavalry and countless soldiers. The bronze-masked man was about to shout for them to take caution when the huge flags suddenly rolled up and 360 huge flags appeared in the city. Weird people that were wearing bamboo hats and carrying cloth sacks suddenly waved them, and the Eternal Peace Empire's army that numbered in tens of thousands suddenly appeared in Daxiang City. It was only at this moment that the voice of the bronze-masked man rang out, "On guard." However, it was already too late. When the 360 weird people rolled up their huge flags, creatures with ferocious faces appeared. They were holding weapons, and their murderous intent flowed into the sky. Under the flags, the golden-armored giants appeared together with cloud chariots. On the aft of the huge flying ships, bronze beasts had already started to spew blazing flames while huge birds flapped their wings and raised up gales. By the time the huge flags completely rolled up and became small, the sounds of slaughter had already begun. Sharp swords came out from their sheaths, their ringing mingling with world-shaking roars. This moment seemed to pass by extremely slow, so slow that the transformation of every person's expression could be seen, from ferocious to malevolent, from blank to terrified. Flying swords burst forth with bloodlight as they sliced through human bodies, shedding blood in the air. There was also a peculiar beauty to the instant when a head was separated from the neck. Elephant transformation. A bellow rang out and broke the moment when time seemed to have frozen. An officer in the infantry shouted out and thousands of foot soldiers bellowed. Their bodies swayed as they transformed into elephant-headed giants, rushing towards the rebel army and breaking them up. The flying cavalry in the meantime had soared into the sky and now dived downwards, shooting countless flying swords like rain. Fire bottle gourds. On the flying ships, an order was given, and the soldiers there took out red bottle gourds that were half the height of a human. When they pulled out the corks, raging true fire instantly spewed down from the flying ships, burning the guards on the city walls, turning countless of people into flaming humans. Boom! A troop of golden-armored strong men pushed the cloud chariots and trampled countless soldiers on their way as they ruthlessly smashed the city walls, shattering them, and flaming humans fell down from above. Outside the walls, Grand General who crowns the army and Grand General of Cherishing Transformation raised their spear and halberd high, pointing them towards Daxiang City. Behind them, the incountable Eternal Peace Army roared and rushed forth both on the ground and in the sky like a flood. The sight in the city was bone-chilling. Before the insect army of Three Wonders Castle could be deployed, they were drowned by a sea of fire and sword, disintegrating into ashes. The insect army of Three Wonders Castle was extremely powerful, but because it was caught by surprise, both the humans and insects were burned to death. The female army of Passion Parting Palace was also extremely powerful, but they received a devastating blow in as well. Countless sharp swords came shooting down from the sky, piercing through their bodies. With thousands of holes, they died while still standing. By the time their bodies collapsed, the sharp swords that had pierced through them had already returned back to the sword cases worked by the cavalry on their back. The entire rebel army and all the disciples from each and every sect didn't have the time to react before they were scattered by the infantry, forcing them to fight for themselves. However, no matter how high their cultivation was, their heads were instantly severed when they got surrounded by the formations of Eternal Peace Empire's soldiers. The battle power of a sect disciple surpassed that of a soldier by a lot, but their teamwork was lousy, so they were scattered with just one charge. Of course, there were people among the rebel army who were trained to work together, but they had been caught off guard. Once the army scattered, it was too late to do anything. This was definitely a massacre, and it had been achieved by the surprise attack under the teleportation flags of Heavenly Devil Cult. For those who were faced with such a thing, there was only one end: a complete obliteration. On the mountain, the bronze-masked man was trembling. Two choices. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor gave them two choices. One was to be raised by Eternal Peace Empire's army. It would push them to the South Sea and kill them to the last person, which was the rule of the Empire. The other choice was to follow the rule of the martial world, challenge Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and fight to the death. They had always thought they would have to choose between these two choices and never expected to face both of them at the same time. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor wanted to beat them to death as well as eradicate the rebel army. When did Heavenly Devil Cult start to rely on the Imperial Court? Passion Parting Palace Master shouted out. When has the supreme sacred ground of the Devil Path become the dogs of the Imperial Court? Secrets of Hatred Parting Heavenly Sword of Passion Parting Palace required the inner heart to be void of emotion, to have no love, hatred, passion, and enmity in order to reach the highest frame of mind in the sword skill. Only when the heart had no foreign objects in itself could it reflect others like a clear mirror, flawlessly. However, when Passion Parting Palace Master Chiu Ji saw her disciples getting massacred, her frame of mind was disrupted. This was no small matter. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor noticed it, and the vital chi on his fingertips transformed into a sword light. It expanded exponentially and reached her throat in an instant. It wasn't only the heart of Passion Parting Palace Master in disorder, but the hearts of all others as well. When Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had made a move on Passion Parting Palace Master, no one managed to intervene. "We are going to die," this thought appeared in the hearts of Chen Wanyun and the others. This mountain was sealed off as part of the 50 hectares of heavenly prison seal so the pulses wouldn't travel out and only rebound to and fro. The moment Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor clashed with them, they would be trampled into smithereens. Before Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor made his move, a huge flag appeared in front of Qin Mu and his companions, covering their bodies. With a jolt, the flag vanished along with the people and the dragon Chelin. The next moment, Qin Mu and the rest appeared at the bottom of the mountain. Chen Wanyun, Yun Qiu, and Yu Qinghong looked at the weird person beside them who was wearing the bamboo hat. He was currently unfurling the huge flag again. A few hundred weird people surrounded this mountain in a circle as their huge flags fluttered, covering the entire mountain. An ancient voice sounded out, "Go!" Swoosh! The several hundred flags fluttered, and when they floated by, the mountain beneath them disappeared along with those cult master-level existences, including Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Only a piece of white land remained where the mountain had been, and on the ground was the crushed city lord's manor. Chen Wanyun, Yun Qiu, and the rest were bewildered when they saw those weird people raising their flags again, covering their group. Before Chen Wanyun and the rest could come back to their senses, a huge flag enclosed upon them. They only felt the world whirling before their feet were once again firmly planted on the ground. It was then that they saw that they had already left the battle in Daxiang City and come to a mountain peak nearby. This mountain peak was extremely high up, and a gale was whooshing about, rustling their clothes. Beside them stood a few hundred weird people wearing bamboo hats. Chen Wanyun and the rest suppressed the shock in their hearts and looked at one another. They are strong practitioners of Heavenly Devil Cult. What are they going to do by kidnapping us? The incomparably mysterious Heavenly Devil Cult was the #1 sacred ground of the Devil Path. This Devil Path sacred ground always conducted itself secretly, and the Imperial Court of Eternal Peace Empire had investigated it many times, yet they had never discovered a lot of information that could be deemed useful. For Heavenly Devil Cult to help Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor this time and even bring their little group out of the place where Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was battling, it definitely had something planned. Suddenly the weird people took down the bamboo hats from the top of their heads and gave the disciples greeting, bowing towards them while saying in unison, "Subordinates pay respects to sacred cult master and saintess." Chen Wanyan and the others were at a loss and felt unease in their hearts when they looked at these strong practitioners of Heavenly Devil Cult bowing and performing the disciples' greeting. Monk Yun Q immediately closed his eyes and shouted, "I saw nothing. I didn't see your faces, don't silence me." At this moment, a familiar voice sounded out beside them, "Rise, no need for formalities." "Thank you, Sacred Cult Master." The weird people stood up and Chen Wanyan and the rest looked at the person who had spoken with a face of astonishment. The first abandoned person to enter Imperial College, the first Imperial Academician of Imperial College, Qin Mu, was the Devil Cult Master of Heavenly Devil Cult. Qin Mu's face was gentle as he smiled at them. "If Academician is the Devil Cult Master, who's the Devil Saintess?" Yu Qinghong asked with a trembling voice. Cai Yunxiang smiled shyly at her, and Yu Qinghong's hair stood up on end. "The Directorate of our Imperial College's Hall of Hidden Light, Directorate Jian Sanchen. Even Directorate Chen Yunting of Hall of Array Element." Chen Wanyan saw Sword Hall Master and Formation Hall Master, which made his heart sink as he muttered, "We're definitely going to die, we're dead." Monk Yun Q shouted angrily, "You're definitely going to die after seeing their true faces, but why did you have to say their names as well?" "I closed my eyes, but now that I've heard their names, I'm going to die too." Sword Hall Master took a glance at the four of them and asked, "Sacred Cult Master, now that they have seen our true faces, should we silence them to be safe?" Monk Yun Q immediately opened his eyes and looked towards Qin Mu with a smile. "Academician, Sacred Cult Master, we're classmates, and you even beat me before, have you forgotten about that? Sister Fox, remember how much money I've given you, can you put in a word for me?" Hu Linga tilted her head and wagged her tail to show that she was helpless. Qin Mu consoled, "Don't worry Scholar Yun, everyone be at ease too, theirs is still me, I'm here." He turned his head and told Sword Hall Master, "Sword Hall, they are all my classmates in Imperial College. You can ask them if they are willing to join our sacred cult, and if they aren't, you can bury them in this place of verdant hills and limpid water." Qin Mu then turned his head around to console his friends. Don't worry, I'll settle this." Monk Yun Q was scared witless and his hair stood up on end. Luckily he was bald, or else even those on his head would have risen up. Qin Mu turned back around and said, "Sword Hall, when you kill them later, don't do it in front of me. Wanyan, Qinghong, don't worry as well, we aren't ruthless villains like the others of the Devil Path, put your heart back into your tummy, you're going to be fine. Draw your sword faster and minimize their pain." "I've heard you." Monk Yun Q shouted, "Sword Hall, don't come over, I'm already part of the Devil Cult." Part of the Sacred Cult?" Yu Qinghong and Chen Wanyan looked at each other, and Yu Qinghong asked in a low voice, "Big brother, what should we do?" Chen Wanyan hesitated for a moment before saying, "For Heavenly Devil Cult to help Imperial Preceptor this time, it means that Heavenly Devil Cult is part of Imperial Court, there's nothing to lose by joining Heavenly Devil Cult." "And if we don't join?" The corners of his eyes twitched, but he didn't say anything else. Yu Qinghong let out a sigh of relief. "There's nothing to lose in joining Heavenly Devil Cult. We'll join." Since she had said so, the wolf slave naturally had nothing else to say. Yu Qinghong blinked her eyes innocently toward Cai Yunxiang. "Saintess, if we did not join the sacred cult, you guys would definitely have not laid your hands on us, right?" Cai Yunxiang gave a soft laugh. "Cult Master has a kind heart, he was just joking with you guys." Monk Yun Q let out a sigh of relief and muttered, "Little Monk knew it was a joke." "Academician, you were joking earlier, right?" "Academician?" Qin Mu chuckled and didn't say anything. Yun Q turned ashen-faced. Qin Mu came to the cliff and looked towards another mountain, which was several miles away from here. That place was where Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and the dozen Cult Master level existences were fighting. The heavenly prison seals set up by the bronze-masked man and the rest had already been pierced through, holes appearing one after another. There was a terrifying storm coming out from those holes, creating violent gales that blew away pieces of the forest, sweeping countless trees into the sky and shredding them into pieces. The battle on the mountain top was too terrifying. It was a life-and-death struggle between existences of Cult Master level. Despite them being so far away and a heavenly prison seal between them, a terrifying sensation could still be felt. Whoosh! Another gale swept by, and only now did Chen Wangyun and the rest realize why the wind was so strong when they had landed on the mountain just now. The gales here were actually created by the battle that was several miles away. The power of the wind grew stronger and stronger, bending the trees on the surrounding mountains. The gusts came one after another. The moment one passed, another had already arrived from another direction. The trees that had snapped back were once again bent, while others broke in half. The mountain should have already been shattered. Qin Mu saw the ground on which those terrifying existences were clashing becoming lower and lower, until it was basically as flat as the plains. Being so far away, Qin Mu could see the battle by using Green Heaven's eyes, but not too clearly. This was because the speed of those people clashing against each other was too fast, which made it hard for Green Heaven's eyes to capture traces of their movements, not to mention their moves. Qin Mu could only use the trails left behind by their movements to determine how many people were still on the mountain. Another existence of the Cult Master level has fallen. Qin Mu's heart trembled slightly. Yu Qinghong looked around and saw the strong practitioners of Heavenly Devil Cult were all standing on the mountain peak silently, observing the battle from afar. They had no intention to go forth and help out, which puzzled her. "Aren't you guys going to help?" "Nope." Qin Mu explained, "Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor can settle this alone." The sneak attack of the three old monsters from the old generation could injure Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, who was in an army of 10,000 men. If it was Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor doing the sneak attack, there would hardly be anyone that could be his match. How our Heavenly Devil Cult could help him was to create the chance for him to make his move. The instant the sect masters lost their spirit, it was the best moment for Imperial Preceptor to launch a sneak attack. No matter if it was the #1 cult of the Devil Path helping Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor or if it was Heavenly Devil Cult using teleportation flags to transfer the Eternal Peace Army, they were able to shake the hearts of all the Cult Master level existences by massacring all the sect's disciples, swaying their minds and throwing them into disorder. Even though their hearts weren't in disorder for too long, this was akin to death in front of an existence like Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Even though people with Cult Master level of power were usually great experts of Divine Bridge Realm, there were those who were weak and those who were strong in Divine Bridge Realm. It was just like what Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had said. He was someone who had no weakness in every realm. No matter how wide another's angles were, their line would never be as long as his straight line. His cultivation surpassed that of others and his abilities also surpassed those of others. Under the circumstances of a sneak attack, there was basically no one who could be his match or even receive one move from him. This was just like in Heaven Wave City when Guian Devil King was fighting against Mute. Guian Devil King had been slain with one attack, and that one attack had been a sneak attack. Qin Mu reckoned that Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor could take advantage of the instant when those strong practitioners lost spirit to get rid of 4 of them. As for how many he could injure, that would depend on Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's own ability. However, no matter how brilliant this battle was in exhibiting the splendor of the strongest powers in this world, there weren't many who could read the situation there. With only the few hundred people present, probably only the left and right guardians could be able to grasp each and every movement of the people present on the battlefield. Even if it were the whole masters of the 360 halls, not many of them could see the moves clearly. Qin Mu once again fixed his eyes on the battlefield, yet he was still unable to see the situation there. He could only see the afterimages created by the fast-moving bodies as well as the lights given off by the divine arts and sword skills. Every once in a while, a trail of light would vanish, representing the death of a strong practitioner. Now there were only 8 figures left. Other than Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, there are still 7 people. Qin Mu's gaze flickered. The 7 people should be the ones that had the strongest abilities, but who were the 7 that were still alive? He could see the godlike rays from the figures moving, but he couldn't see who was who. If I cannot see the situation of the battle, aren't I losing out on a huge opportunity? I wonder if I can awaken my cyan heaven's eyes. Qin Mu mobilized his vital qi and more of it entered his eyes as he tried to construct the formation markings of cyan heaven's eyes. There were already 3 layers of pupils in his eyes. The first layer was his own pupils, the second layer was the pupils formed by heaven's eyes, while the third layer was the pupils formed by green heaven's eyes. If he could form cyan heaven's eyes, they would become the 4th layer and allow him to see even more stuff. Just as he was directing his vital qi into his eyes, he felt a trace of something else entering his eyes along with his vital qi. Qin Mu was stunned and suddenly felt that everything on the battlefield had become incomparably clear. He shook his head and looked at the battlefield again. It was still incomparably clear. And he hadn't even formed the formation markings of cyan heaven's eyes. There's someone else's eyes in my eyes. Qin Mu felt a bone-chilling cold go down his spine. He could now see every movement and action that Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was making, every layer of divine arts and sword skills, and even the structure of them. Every action and expression was in his eyes. This wasn't what his eyes could see, but what someone else's eyes could see. Or it could be said that it was someone else borrowing his eyes to observe the battle. Who was the one borrowing his eyes to observe the battle? He suddenly remembered that when he had summoned Guian Devil King in Heaven Wave City, Guian Devil King's consciousness and magic power had used his body as a medium to enter the Devil God sculpture, blowing open the heart of his brows. Sparks had flowed out from the heart of his brows, surging into the Devil God sculpture while he was executing Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique. While circulating the technique, he felt something enter his body along with the vital qi circulation. When the disciples of Great Mountain Sect arrived and executed Devil Withdraw command, even if it was unable to chase Guian Devil King back, Qin Mu had felt the summoning being cut off when Devil Withdraw command shone on Guian Devil King's body. The consciousness and magic power that had been surging out of his body had been cut off. This meant that there was still a portion of Guian Devil King's consciousness and magic power in Qin Mu's body. In that case, the one in staying in my body and borrowing my eyes to observe the battle is none other than Guian Devil King. Qin Mu was slightly terrified. Where exactly was this consciousness of Guian Devil King hiding in his body? Why didn't he feel any abnormalities when he was cultivating Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique all this while? What was Guian Devil King planning? Granny Sai had Devil Cult Master Li Qianqing in her body, so if he got Guian Devil King in his body, that would be a great joke. Qin Mu kept quiet. It was a good thing for him to let Guian Devil King borrow his eyes to observe the battle. This allowed him to observe the situation in the battlefield as well as the divine arts that the experts unleashed. This could widen his horizons exponentially. What's still in me is just a portion of Guian Devil King's consciousness and magic power. No matter how strong he is, he cannot be that strong. As long as I can find him, I'll definitely be able to get rid of him. I shouldn't alert him but pretend I know nothing. He was finally able to see the battle clearly. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's swords weren't physical swords but ones formed by his vital qi, which was ever-changing, gathering and scattering at will. Flaming lights raged about his body as though he was a god, and Qin Mu remembered seeing this kind of rays on village chief's body too. When Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor executed sword skills, even the most basic sword form looked incomparably complicated and marvelous. There were not only basic sword forms in his sword skills but also calculations and transformations that were even more complicated. Dao Sword of Dao Sect. Qin Mu was stunned. He could see the shadow of Dao Sect's Dao Sword in Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's sword skill. That was an incomparably complicated calculation technique. If one took yin-yang symbol for example, anyone could draw a circle, but not everyone could calculate the proportion of the circle that the curved line cut apart. This involved the first form of Dao Sect, the trick to yin and yang come and go within 2 modes. To achieve the coming and going of yin and yang, using canon of supreme mystery was of utmost importance. Yin and yang come and go within 2 modes unleashed its greatest power when one calculated the endless numbers. If one wanted to reach an even higher level, they had to calculate to the Shu Kong and Qing Jing decimal. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor has extremely deep attainments in mathematics. Qin Mu thought to himself. If I had known, I would have consulted him regarding the canon of supreme mystery when we were heading down south. The people clashing with Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor were the three elders, Teacher Po, Wanderer Li, and True Lord Qian. They deserved to be called the top practitioners of the old generations. The rays given off from their bodies made them look like three ancient gods, and each of them had their own unique skills. The huge brush in Teacher Po's hand was like a brush, yet its hairs were very long, making it look like a horsetail whisk. However, it had fewer transformations than a horsetail whisk. Wanderer Li was a sword cultivator and cultivated sword skills. They were incomparably intricate, but still inferior to those of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. His sword skills were made up of the 14 basic sword forms, so even though they were marvelous, they had already fallen behind in times. The age had advanced, yet he still remained on the same spot. What True Lord Qian refined were venomous insects, turning them into all kinds of weird dragons. For example, there was a heavenly centipede dragon that was 300 yards long, a heaven silkworm that was refined into a dragon silkworm, a green snake that was refined into a green flood dragon, and many other kinds of insects of peculiar shapes. Even though these venomous creatures were powerful, they still fell out of the sky under Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's sword skills, getting killed one after another. Qin Mu reckoned that True Lord Qian wouldn't be able to hold out much longer. Other than these three people, there were still 4 others. Among them was Chi Dayo of Beggar Sect, whose 100-paw mystery technique was very unique. His body could materialize into physical form or incorporeal at will, allowing him to appear and disappear unpredictably. 100-paw mystery technique meant that he had nothing at all, and it was a very unique technique. The other person who had preserved his life so far was Spiritual Master Dao Quan. His ability was the weakest among everyone, so it was hard to say if he had managed to stay alive himself or Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had spared him, maybe no seeing him as a threat. The third person was Venerable Shi Kong of Great Strength Monastery. The power of formation, existence, destruction, emptiness, 4 incantations mudra was extraordinary, but under Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's sword, this senior monk that had achieved his Tao was covered in injuries and didn't have much strength left. The fourth person was the bronze-masked man. His attacks were the most overbearing, and also the most puzzling to Qin Mu. The man mainly used divine arts, and when they burst forth, there would be images of 9 dragons. Those images looked like 9 real dragons rushing forward with formidable power. There was an incredible amount of transformations in these 9 dragons. They contained all kinds of offensive and defensive divine arts, as well as those that controlled fire and water and those that evolved yin and yang. The firepower could be both fierce and also overbearing, yet it was also full of changes. No matter if it was offense, defense, or even refining, the bronze-masked man could do them at will. Furthermore, he had cultivated until these 9 dragons had close to a physical form. 9 Dragons Monarch Technique. This was the technique of the Emperor's Ling family. Only those with the Emperor's bloodline could cultivate it. Ordinary princes and princesses weren't allowed to touch it at all. It was evident that this bronze-masked man was a member of the royal family. Furthermore, from the realm of his cultivation, he should be one of the higher-ups of the higher-ups in the royal family. Even though his attack was incomparably overbearing, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor didn't kill him mercilessly. It was hard to say if he had some qualms about doing so. Who is this person? Qin Mu was shocked. Right at this moment, he felt something in his heart and looked towards the west to see a gigantic apparition of a majestic mountain hurrying over. Qin Mu was slightly stunned. This mountain was unbelievably big, but it was merely an apparition and not a physical mountain. It was formed by the aura of countless eccentric-looking monks. Mount Meru. That apparition of the mountain had many mountain tops of all sizes, and each mountain top was a monk sitting in the lotus position. There were also some who were standing and holding a jade vase, while a few others were sitting and holding their bellies with big smiles. On the golden top of the highest peak, there was a huge Buddha shining brilliantly as though he was made of pure gold. The 10,000 rays behind his head were incomparably outstanding. Great Thunderclap Monastery, Old Buddha Rulai. Qin Mu's heart trembled violently. Great Thunderclap Monastery had come. Rulai personally led the guardians, venerables, bodhisattvas, arhats of Great Thunderclap Monastery in a rush here. What did he want to do? At this moment, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor also felt something and suddenly attacked mercilessly, slaying Venerable Shi Kong in one strike. Right then, the strong practitioners of Heavenly Devil Cult also turned around and looked at the apparition of Mount Meru that was floating over. Bald donkeys. Left Guardian sneered. Bald donkeys, everyone shouted in unison. Monk Yun Q saw everyone calling the newcomers bald donkeys and forced himself to call them bald donkeys as well. After all, he was part of Heavenly Devil Cult now, even if he was a monk. The apparition of Mount Meru floated to the sky above them, and the guardians, venerables, bodhisattvas, and arhats on the mountain looked down together and said coldly in unison, "Evil creatures of the devil path." Qin Mu revealed a weird expression. The relation between our Heavenly Saint cult and Great Thunderclap Monastery seems to be a little strained. This video will end here.